Hey guys, welcome to today's Vehicle Visionary. Today, my friends at Holmes Volvo Cars here in Shreveport, Louisiana have loaned me the 2021 version of the Volvo XC60 T5 Inscription. This front-wheel drive SUV may not be the sportiest thing on the road, but I'll tell you one thing, Volvo has really stepped up their game with the interior on this model. If you don't believe me, have a quick look for yourself. Depending on the options and trim level of the XC60 that you choose to purchase, the prices range between $41,700 and $69,500. This particular model that we're looking at today comes in with a price tag of $58,725. Under the hood is the turbocharged 2-liter 4-cylinder, and it's definitely not the most powerful thing on the road, but there are advantages when you're putting out 250 horsepower and 258 foot-pounds of torque. What is the advantage to that? Well, it does get down the road very nice as the way the 8-speed automatic transmission is geared, and depending on what drive mode you select will definitely help in taking advantage of that power. When I drove in dynamic mode during my test drive, I must admit I had a really good time. It got down the road when I wanted it to quickly, and I liked the fact that the transmission maintained each gear for a longer period of time, allowing to accelerate faster than I have seen happen with other vehicles in the past. Not to get too technical on you there, but that is a good thing. Of course, the gas mileage, 22 miles per gallon estimated in the city and 29 out on the highway. So if you're looking for an SUV that's not going to just suck gas down like it's going out of style, well, this very well could be an option for you. Of course, you have features such as power folding side view mirrors. It's always nice when you're in a tight space or maybe in a position in your garage where it's just easier to open and close the doors with those mirrors folded in. Of course, when you have a black exterior color like this, I said earlier this isn't meant to be a real sporty vehicle as far as its overall appearance, but I'll tell you what, the black exterior color blended with the chrome accents here on the windows, the roof rails, and the logos on the rear door back here on the XC60, that definitely makes it look more sporty, and so do the rims. A very nice package on this particular model. And of course, you have all of the typical safety features that you would expect and driving aids as well, and I'll list that on the screen for you right now. Feel free to pause the video to peruse those, as I'm not going to leave them up too long, but just long enough for you to take a look. Now, there are multiple driving modes, including an off-road mode. So if you wanted to go off-roading, I don't have information or experience, I should say, on how that would work in a real-world situation. Number one, I just didn't have a place to take it. And number two, this vehicle's not even checked into inventory yet. Really appreciate my friends at the dealership for giving this to me on such short notice like this. But let's hop to the rear back here. We'll open the rear lift gate. We'll talk about what you can expect as far as cargo space for any off-road excursions, or even what you can expect if you'd like to tow a trailer. Whether or not the rear seats are in their upright position or lowered, you have a large amount of cargo space, but it does maximize out by lowering those seats to over 63 cubic feet, a very nice amount of space. And you do have a little storage on the side, a 12-volt power outlet. Of course, there's cargo lights back here. You have a spare tire, and there is a nice hook here that you can use to keep the floor out of the way if you ever need to get access to the tire or tools or whatever you're getting out of the little area right here underneath the floor. Now, what about towing? 3,500 pounds maximum for the XC60. So that does give you some options. Not that that's necessarily the main reason somebody would buy one of these, but in the event that you want to know, well, now you do. I'm sitting straight up here in the back seat and have a nice amount of headroom. I mean, it's not the most you're going to find, but especially your middle seat passenger, if there's one back here, will definitely have room with the panoramic sunroof. But even with being here on one of the outside seats, it's not too bad. A lot of nice storage space back here. You've got the door pockets. You've also got a couple of different options on storage here. You could put whatever you want to, maybe some snacks right there. You can also open up this little middle storage area and fit whatever you can fit in there. Not a lot of space there, but it is there. And then here on the front are 2 cup holders. And of course you have the nets on the back of the seats, and the seats back here overall are very comfortable. I don't know what it's like to ride down the road back here, obviously, because I haven't had a chance to do that. And you have a couple of USB ports located on the bottom of the rear of the console back here. Then you have the adjustments, a digital adjustment here for the air conditioning vents, and they're not dual air conditioning vents. There's actually 4 back here. There's 2 in the conventional location, but also on the outside, just inside the doors on the driver and the passenger sides. And like I said, the panoramic sunroof, a very nice view for your rear seat passengers. And of course I gave you a good shot of what that looks like from above, but as you can see, it's very nice and very large. Definitely a very nice, luxurious feature for the XC60. And the first thing I notice when I hop into the front seat is that it's nice and comfortable. It is nice and spacious up here. You don't have an overload of buttons and switches to deal with. A nice modern looking instrument cluster. There's not any changes from the last few years on this model, but still it looks nice and modern. Now there are no steering wheel mounted paddle shifters, you'll notice, but that doesn't mean that when you're driving in dynamic mode that you can't shift manually. All you have to do is move the shifter itself over to the left, and then you can push it up to gear up and pull it down to gear down. So it's a nice little feature, kind of an almost ratchet shifter effect in a way. That's not what it is, but that is that feature. Now here's one little thing that I find very interesting, and because I've done a couple of other Volvo vehicles that have a similar system to it in the interior, it wasn't that big of a deal, but the first time I did on another vehicle a while back, it took me a second to find it. But the button for starting the engine, it's not really a button, it's more of a switch. It's not located here on the dashboard, it's right here in the middle behind the shifter, and you just turn that to the right. The ignition is right there. Turn that to the right to start the engine, turn it to the right again to shut it back down when you're ready to do so. Kind of just an interesting little feature. And right behind that, the dial selector for your driving modes. But I like the fact that it's not overly complicated. Very simple. You have the electric parking brake, and there is that button that I think is so important to turn it off, in my opinion. The auto stop start feature is behind the electric parking brake. You can turn that off if you so decide to do so. That's what I usually do. And you have your steering wheel mounted controls. Everything is nice and easy to get to here. Seat memory. And the seats themselves, yes, they're very comfortable. A little bit of bolstering. I would like to see maybe a little bit more to kind of wrap around the driver, but not bad. I've definitely been in vehicles that had less. And you have a couple of cup holders here, and the console here in the middle has a nice amount of space. You will find another couple of USB ports there for your use. And here in the front there is a 12-volt outlet if you wish to take advantage of that. So a lot of nice options here. Of course, you've got dual zone climate control that you do control here through the infotainment screen. And I like the size of the screen. A lot of people say that's a difficult screen to use. I found it not to be so difficult, and I have gone through in a little more in-depth tour of the screen in other videos. If you'd like to see that, just check out my Volvo playlist. Okay guys, we're gonna get out here on the road on a little test drive here, and I've driven in the multiple driving modes, and I can tell you that in comfort and eco mode, you know, depending on what you want and what your driving style and desires are, the biggest difference I noticed, yeah, you're going to be able to take a little bit more advantage of the horsepower, and even though this isn't a highly powerful engine, I should say, with the 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder, it's definitely going to get you around, not going to have a problem. I wish I could go off-road and kind of give you a more real-world experience of what that's like, but I've driven in Eco, I've driven in Comfort, and now I am in Dynamic. And here's the thing that I noticed about the different driving modes is that in the first two, Eco and Comfort, the steering wheel feels a little bit more loose to me. And that's not a bad thing. It's just if it's what you're used to, that's great. But if you want a little bit more of a firm grip when it comes to the way it feels you're going down the road and how the steering wheel responds, well, dynamic mode is definitely good for that. I definitely noticed the steering tighten up in dynamic mode, and for me personally, that's something I like, but for somebody who may not notice the difference, I know a lot of people may not notice that, being that I'm a performance enthusiast, I definitely noticed that. But I will say that one of my favorite traits here is the heads-up display. Any vehicle that has a heads-up display, I just really enjoy taking advantage of that. But you know, I always like to ask questions for everyone to answer down in the comments section. And one of the things I noticed in my earliest experiences with a vehicle using a heads-up display is I kept, even though it's right in front of me on the windshield, I always noticed that I kept out of habit looking down at the instrument cluster, and now I'm out of that habit. Tell me about your experiences in that respect. I'm very curious to know. We'll get rid of this person in the way here, and let's just see what an acceleration test looks like or feels like. You know, one thing I definitely have to say, I'm very impressed with the fact that the gears wind out pretty far. The transmission isn't changing gears quickly. The acceleration is a lot better based on the mapping of the transmission. So you actually have a longer gear, basically. I don't want to get anyone confused on what I mean by that. Basically, what I'm talking about is the engine gains more RPM when you drop the pedal to the floor to accelerate at top acceleration, basically what this vehicle can do. I'm really impressed with the fact that it stays in each gear for a longer period of time, and I got up to about 80 miles an hour right there, and it didn't take all that long. I was actually very impressed. Now, obviously, I've got some traffic in front of me, so we're still cruising along right around the speed limit, so you get to have a little bit of an experience at cornering. I'm not slowing down or taking my foot off the gas pedal at all, just working my way through the corner right there. We're only going about 50 miles an hour, so not that fast. I would probably go a little faster through here if it wasn't for having people in front of me. But I like the way the steering feels, and you get used to the steering depending on what you want to drive in. If you go between multiple modes, of course, it might vary a little bit, but the steering is very responsive, and it didn't take me any time to get used to the steering. Sometimes I drive vehicles, and whether it's understeer or oversteer, it might take a little time to get used to it. I really like the balance here. This is actually very good based on other experiences I have with other vehicles. When it comes to the SUV market, the luxury SUV market that this particular model fits into, the XC60 is not the sportiest. It's not necessarily the most entertaining, but I will say this, it definitely has what I would likely call the best list of standard features you're going to find anywhere, and not a terrible price depending on which trim level you get, again, when you compare it to its competitors. Tell me what you think down in the comments section. I appreciate my friends at Volvo Cars of Shreveport for loaning me this model for the day, and each and every one of you for taking the time to watch. I look forward to seeing you in my next video.